The reach is pretty widespread, from a policy level to a manufacturing level to schools to the individual. 10 years ago, they thought they were supposed to do this when they were grocery shopping, to now, well, I can eat a little more of this. And so if you're somebody actively paying attention to what you should or what you shouldn't eat, what influencers are saying, what nutritionists are saying, what politicians are saying, like, I think this affects everything.
This is Generation Health. We bring you the latest news, cutting-edge research, and time-tested best practices helping you live a longer, healthier life. Dante DiMatteo, PharmD. How are you, my friend?
Doing well. Thank you. How about you?
I'm fantastic. Josiah Schweinberg, mic number 3. What's up, man?
Hello, hello.
Excellent. I mean, that's not
how are you? Oh, sorry.
I'm good. I'm good.
I'm doing well.
It's a little dark, but that's okay.
It is.
That's why we have lights.
Is it just because it's not as bright out as it usually is?
Yep.
Yeah, natural light coming through.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a cloudy day outside, and so it's made the rest of the room seem dark, like we're recording at midnight.
Yeah.
That's when we record.
We have a dark episode coming in.
Cloudy in Pittsburgh? Nah. No.
We're talking about, I don't know if you've been living under a rock, but it turns out
It's dark there under a rock.
you're not helping.
Sorry.
It's definitely dark under the rock.
We're going to talk about the new food pyramid. We're talking about the new dietary guidelines that were just released by the FDA, right? I say just released. They've been out for a minute. Everybody's heard about this at this point, but we, of course, have to enter into the fray because this is definitely in our wheelhouse, something that we talk about regularly. So if you've heard people with their strong opinions.
I guess it's technically the USDA and HHS.
Okay.
Sorry.
USDA, HHS, not the FDA. That's weird. Why wouldn't the FDA? It doesn't matter. Anyway.
They're like an outside
They're
authority.
an adjunct to, got it. But we're gonna take everybody through them and talk about a little bit about the controversy and what's going on, why people are upset, why people are excited, and what is worthwhile in the midst of all of this, right?
Right.
All right. So this is the 2025 to 2030 Dietary Guidelines. Dietary Guidelines for Americans, or DGA. What all is this include? Like, this is a policy update, kind of, but what all does this actually affect?
Yeah. So the general answer is that this will roll out over, as the date range implies, it'll roll out over the course of now through 2030. So there are certain things that, schools will have to implement next year. There are more stringent things in 2 years. And then by 2030, the full gamut of some of these explicit recommendations need to be finished. So that's kind of I think that's a great way to start this, in that this is sort of informational right now, but most of what we're going to be talking about, unless there's some sort of pullback on what's been released, these will affect schools. They'll affect the national lunch calendar at schools in the United States. It should make its way into industry, and it should incentivize or de-incentivize certain practices that food manufacturers are partaking in. So the reach is pretty widespread. So from a policy level to a manufacturing level to schools to the individual, to how they 10 years ago, they thought they were supposed to do this when they were grocery shopping, to now, well, I can eat a little more of this. And so if you're somebody actively paying attention to what you should or what you shouldn't eat, what influencers are saying, what nutritionists are saying, what politicians are saying, like, this is, I think this affects everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more than just, the pretty graphic that's on the wall is different. It has some actual implications for policy and the way people's lives happen.
Yep. It's and I'm glad you mentioned the graphic too, because it's we all remember the food pyramid. Oh, yeah. We all remember the posters that were in the lunch line growing up. And this is, I think, is set to be a memorable one as well. Because it basically just took a food pyramid and flipped it upside down. So all the things that it's the inverse of essentially what it used to be. And so it's symbolic of this new regime coming in and saying, you know what, like we're gonna turn this whole thing on its head, and we're gonna put red meats in the top left corner, and at the very bottom are the fibrous whole grains. And so it's very much it's a statement, if you will.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, let's talk about that. You have in the notes, it says hostile takeover. What's going on with that?
So,
what's hostile about a food pyramid?
Right. Right. That's what's unfortunate. Before I answer that, this was something we were going to talk about regardless.
Of course.
But then there are people in the circles that I watch as it relates to CrossFit, and a lot of those people are very outspoken about their politics, and that's fine. Whatever. I don't let it sway me one way or the other as far as whether or not I consume their content or not.
Yeah.
But when I hear things like, finally, it's about time, the government and the higher ups are telling us to eat real food, finally, like as if I struggled with that idea, as if like everybody was forced before to just eat cereal, fortified cereal, or like eggs weren't on the food pyramid, and like, as if all these things were always just unanimously demonized. And now suddenly it's like, well, see, we fixed this group came in and they fixed it.
Yeah. And
I struggle with the general ideology of those things on both sides, because again, the hopes are that food shouldn't be some ultra politicized thing, but it is.
Yeah.
And
it's
clearly
that way.
Yes.
You know what? Food is for all people.
Yeah. It's just like, you just hear the ideologies on both sides clashing with this sort of thing. And so I hope to cut through some of that.
Yep.
So it's a hostile takeover because in years past, the procedural end of new guidelines was pretty straightforward. There was a 20 or so person academic committee, and usually this committee, while often criticized, for having those involved in industry, Kellogg and General Mills and those sorts of interests,
right?
They were a part of it, and then there were experts on the other end of the spectrum in that committee as well. The goal and the parameters of these committees is not to exclude financial interest altogether. It's just to say, hey, disclose your financial interests. If you have a supplement company, if you have this, or whatever the case, just state it. But then we also got to have experts kind of from each of those, each of those. There's just no way to put anybody on a committee like this that isn't going to be biased in some fashion. So it's not a matter of
if you are an expert in your field, it's highly likely that you will be working for a large corporation that can pay you well,
right?
Because you know a lot about nutrition, or you know a lot about beef, or whatever.
Right.
It's not shocking. And those are theoretically the people that you want involved in this. So yes, there's a conflict of interest, but at the same time, that's inevitable.
Exactly. So the issue in lies that the incoming administration rejected the report that this committee had been working on for 2025.
Okay.
And just said, and so this initial report, I believe you can find it. And it was more centered, and you could predict where it was going.
Yep.
More about health equity, more about, the social determinants of food intake, the social determinants of health that we'll mention. And this kind of just said, hey, like, we're gonna put all that on pause for right now, and we're gonna focus on the biochemistry and the physiology of what we think you should eat and why we are where we are in terms of this metabolic health decline. And so literally they installed a new team and essentially just wrote a counter report. And so it's a new committee. It's 9 members. There's really no information as to how these members were voted in or appointed. And so
we know who they are.
We do.
Okay.
We do. And all of their interests are made public. So this isn't like an attack on these guys individually for what their interests are.
Right.
It's just that when you look at these 9, 8 out of the 9 of them have industry ties. They are largely skewed towards dairy councils, beef boards, beef associations, cattle associations. So
wow.
So
Man,
exactly.
I like steak, but that's a lot.
Yeah. So again, this is like it's fine in and of itself. These people are smart people. They're scientists. They're not like, some schlums off the street who like steak. Like, no, these are legitimate opinions.
Right.
But again, it's when you rally up the boys and girls that are all generally from the same sphere, it's going to cause a little pushback.
Yeah.
And their pushback is, the boards of the past were all biased towards industry, the grain industry in the 80s. And there was not enough lobbyists for beef in the 2020s. And so whether the guidelines themselves, which we'll get to, whether they truly reflect this, it's just that like, it's important to understand that this is what's going on under the hood as like how we arrived where we are. And and it's a little bit problematic no matter where you stand. It's off, right?
Even if everything they said is 100% correct, the fact that there are questions about these people and the process means that all of it's going to be shot through with doubt,
right?
No matter what.
Exactly.
Which I guess is just kind of a sign of the times.
I was going to say what people aren't clouded with doubt.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what party you're for. If the other party cures cancer and, moves world peace to happen, then there's a reason that we shouldn't have cured cancer because,
right.
Everybody's going to be angry about everything. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm being black-pilled over here. Okay, so let's get specific. We'll go broad brush first of all. What are the big changes that were made? What is this new pyramid? Tell me the details on that, and then we'll get into some more specifics after that.
So the biggest change is the protein correction. And so the old guidelines were more reflective of the RDA's recommendation. So I believe it was 0.8 grams per kilogram of protein per day, which is not a whole lot. And most
grams per kilogram of body weight.
Yes.
Per day. Okay.
Exactly. And so we have often discussed that we felt that was too low. Many, authorities in the health and wellness space agreed that was probably too low for most people, let alone if you have, performance-oriented goals or muscle building goals, then these recommendations are skewed a little bit higher. Now, as far as, the evidence being crystal clear, that, you need 1.2 grams per kilogram per day to live a healthy life, I think some of that is a stretch. And so for these guidelines to now put forth a much larger range, which is now 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram a day. I think some of the experts just have, some issue with maybe where some of those conclusions were made, where some of that data was pulled. I don't particularly disagree with that. I mean, a lot of the sarcopenia research has, recommendations much higher than this. But again, this is a kind of a subset of the population that they're anabolically resistant. It's hard for them to put muscle mass on regardless of exercise and, dietary intake. It can be treated, but this is a much more situation. This is a situation where you'd have to be much more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So in the guidelines, they really draw from that end of the spectrum. Like, we want to prevent anabolic resistance. We want to prevent things like sarcopenia. Those that are sarcopenic have to eat this much protein. So I think that's where a lot of this is born.
Okay.
But I don't really view that as a inflammatory recommendation per se. For some people, it's
quite the contrary, actually.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
For some, it's going to be, it's going to feel like a lot more. This puts 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram. For context, it's not quite
Yeah,
a gram.
Put it in American units.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite 1 gram per pound body weight, but it's pushing closer to that. So if you're 150 pounds, that means 150 grams of protein, or 130.
Yeah,
and so it's a big jump for those that were actually paying attention to this beforehand. There's some of the kidney concern, the kidney health pushback on higher protein diets, but I don't really think it's necessary to go deep into that. But
it seems like the general consensus is that more protein is better.
Yes. So yeah, a lot of this protein, the change in the protein recommendation does just, it uses some of the research even that we talked about as far as muscle protein synthesis. And in order to, essentially after or while eating a meal, after exercising, in order for the exercise, in order for the protein to actually drive a response that allows you to maintain or build muscle, like there needs to be a certain amount of leucine, there needs to be a certain amount of protein. It needs to be spaced out a certain amount of time, certain distance throughout the day to make sure each, you give your body enough time basically to elicit the response that you want. So it's just funny, it's like all of a sudden now we kind of get which is like common in the vernacular of the bodybuilding and the optimizer space, that now it's like right here in the guidelines, almost like referencing some of the same things, I think is interesting. But yeah, not a very I think for some it probably is, but eating a little more protein, I don't think is the craziest, is the craziest thing.
Well, a wise person often talks about what are you replacing it with, and
right.
It seems like replacing some of the other stuff you're eating with lean protein just is generally a good idea.
Right.
If you eat more protein, you're probably eating less of the other stuff that isn't as good for you, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Exactly. Now, that's a good segue into the fat discussion. So some of the fat changes.
Yep. Dietary fat specifically.
Yes. If you look, as you're listening to this, if you look at the pyramid, like I mentioned, you'll see a little container of ground beef. You'll see a big ribeye steak right at the top of the pyramid. This kind of flies right in the face of some of the things that I've said on the shows and what I recommend to people. It kind of flies in the face of maybe what some other countries have recommended. It flies in the face of some of the overarching evidence that I think is available at this time.
Okay.
And so for it to just be right there as a new recommendation, if you will, or an updated recommendation is interesting, because you mentioned eating more protein is likely going to displace some other nutrient. And sure, you could make the argument that eating a steak is better than a Pop-Tart, right? Like what are you replacing it with? That conversation. The issue is we have a little bit of a mathematical problem here, and I'll explain that. And for people who track their calories or for a little more privy to nutrition labels and such, that you can make sense of this. You want people to eat more protein, great.
Yep.
But then the sources of protein that you are most glaringly recommending are those that are just have a proclivity to higher saturated fat contents. So they want us to, I didn't mention it yet, but as far as fat recommendations, a push for full fat dairies, which has not been the case for a while. It's more of this low fat, the labels.
Yep.
Which in and of itself, I'm not saying is perfect either.
Right.
But when you just you skew this the other way, and it's eat more protein, eat more dairy, but not just dairy, whole fat dairy, 3 servings of dairy a day, red meats, ground meats, cheeses. So sure, yeah, you're going to hit that 1.6 grams per kilogram, or 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. You're going to hit that no problem. But then you're going to be hit into a range of saturated fat intake that is either higher than you're accustomed to, or higher than what's currently being recommended. So there's a genuine mathematical conundrum here that's occurring.
Yeah.
Right?
In caloric terms, like we know that a gram of protein is roughly 4 calories, I think. Something, it just, if it's pure protein, it's about 4 calories. And then fat is similarly very calorically dense.
More than double.
Yeah.
9 grams.
Right.
Or excuse me, 9 calories per gram.
So if you have a lot of protein and a lot of fat, you're having a lot of calories.
So there's the calorie part.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting, there's a little, of course, there's a little section in the incorporate healthy fats portion. And this says, quote, in general, saturated fat consumption should not exceed 10% of total daily calories. So I don't really see how you do that.
That's going to be difficult to do.
It is. It is. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's going to take being very thoughtful, right? Now, the other end of this, and I'm just pointing out firstly here the paradox, the kind of the contradiction that's occurring. There are most people in the camp that has pushed the new guidelines, they would probably tell you that the 10% recommendation just needs to go altogether.
Yeah.
And at this point, I mean, I would have rather just seen it go, because now if you're talking to people who count calories or are familiar with just kind of the nerdiness of some of this,
yeah,
then you know it's going to be a challenge. But again, they would probably just tell you to forget it. It's not the saturated fat that's driving, dietary cholesterol that's driving blood cholesterol levels to increase. That's not what's driving atherosclerosis. It's the oxidized LDL that's causing atherosclerosis. It's the seed oils that are oxidized, and that's what's causing the problem. So it's like the tip of the iceberg of what's the big dietary people are fighting over.
I think this, one of the things that's interesting is that this change has really just allowed the public, if they're paying attention, to see just how much conflict there is. The
polarity
behind the scenes. And the reason why so many people are so confused, why eggs are good, no eggs are bad, no coffee's good, no coffee's, like the endless string of counter recommendations, people are getting a chance to go, oh, there really are radically different opinions.
Right.
Based, generally speaking, based on science, maybe not all good science, varying levels and qualities, but there's evidence and counter evidence for all of this stuff, and it's constantly being discussed and debated, and now everybody gets to see it just a little bit.
Yep, exactly. I'm hoping, a lot of people, they would have looked at the 9-page summary instead of the 90-page summary or overview, and said, would have had no concept of any of this that's going on. But like you're saying, if at the very least you just see that we're, talking about the divisiveness that something as simple as dietary guidelines reveals, it's fascinating. And I, to kind of loop back some of the sciencey stuff again, I think one point I didn't maybe emphasize was that a lot of the current authors, the current authors of the
new one?
takeover, we'll say, they're focused really on the diabetes, insulin kind of perspective on this, that it's the blood glucose excursions that are driving the increase of adipose tissue that people are holding on to. It's all the carbohydrates that we're eating. It's the insulin resistance
problem. Yeah.
Right. And it's not that that's not the core issue.
Yeah.
But it seems as though it is the end all be all, and it becomes less about what was more, your basic calories in, calories out. People are going to get their calories different ways. We think maybe you should do them kind of this way, but if you're eating this amount, that's better than eating an amount that's too much, maybe regardless of the fat to carbohydrate mix. Mm-hmm. And they're a little more like, nope, we know and we think that what's been given to us for the last 40 years, that's been the problem. And it's the low carb, it's the
high carb,
high
low fat.
carb, low fat,
Yep.
though that sort of thing that's driven industry and driven all these problems. And again, the issue is multifaceted. So I'm not saying that it has nothing to do with the amount of carbs that we're eating. That's not the point, but it just does no good to flip to the other end of the spectrum, in my opinion. It's the whole like seed oil thing. And it's like, dude, really? Like it's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around. And then the point that it misses, you're missing the forest for the trees in some of this, and that the guidelines will ignore kind of the oncological side of things, the cancer side of things. And
that's a big word.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
I was like, Uncle who?
Yeah. The, promotion essentially of red meat as nutrient dense, while ignoring that, hey, some of the longer term, like non-interventional, the epidemiological data is saying that like we have a strong link to colorectal cancer. Like, how do you square some of that, right? Like we have data right in front of us that should at least make you pause on some of that. And I'm sure that this regime would say, well, hey, we're not only telling you to eat, red meat, right? And fair point. Totally get that. But the issue is, again, you have this group coming in that's like, you've been telling us not to eat any steak for all this time. And like, now we're back. Beef tallow. I mean, beef tallow is in the guideline to eat.
Is it really?
Yeah. Butter and beef tallow in the guidelines. Like on what planet can you stay under 10% of your calories in saturated fat using butter to cook in, or beef tallow, or now both maybe, and then full fat yogurt, which is so easy to get and eat, and it's readily available. I love yogurt. I love full fat yogurt. This isn't a, we're not bashing, we're not here to bash full fat yogurt.
Yeah.
But steak, ground meat. I mean, there's a container of ground meat at the top. Like how can you possibly do all of those things and hit this other like little side goal? Like it's going to take some serious gymnastics to.
I just asked Gemini if I wanted 50 grams of protein, give me the fat and caloric content for both chicken and steak, and 50 grams of chicken breast, it says, is roughly 160 grams serving. That's going to have 5.5 grams of fat, and it will be about 265 calories. Versus if I wanted steak, that's going to be about 220 grams versus 160. So it's a much bigger piece of meat. It's going to have, instead of 5.5 grams of fat, it's going to have 35 grams of fat. And instead of being 265 calories, it's about 540 calories. And of course, that massive increase, that's almost double the caloric, and that is more than double the caloric intake. It's because of the fat that's in the steak versus the chicken.
Right.
So like you're saying, it's going to be real hard to stay under those theoretical guidelines of 10%
exactly
daily.
Right. And it's the old guidelines didn't say to stop eating red meat. I mean, I have largely cut out a huge portion of it because of those guidelines and because of people echoing those guidelines. And, again, I understand my bias. I get that, but we riffed on this now for a few minutes. Okay. And so what would somebody actually do with, we'll focus on stay with the dietary fat intake portion. I think a balanced way to maybe put this all together, and, politics aside, there's a very easy way that you could make this a biomarker-dependent decision. And so what I mean by that is if you've had lab work done looking at blood cholesterol as we've recommended, and what's recommended in cardiology guidelines,
virtually every doctor is going to tell you, get your cholesterol checked.
Yes, exactly. So you can verify this for yourself based upon what you have or have not been eating. And so there is to the defense of the new regime, there's a dairy matrix, or there's a food matrix aspect to this that says, hey, the saturated fat from fermented and whole dairy sources of food just does not have the same impact on the way blood cholesterol circulates in your blood. It does not have the same negative impact on cardiovascular risk. And I think that's what's maybe the main point in these guidelines. And that's absolutely true. The food matrix concept it doesn't just apply here, but is especially strong when it comes to the milk fat end of things. And so, there's still a like a hierarchy, I think, of good fats and bad fats. There's the best, which we think are polyunsaturated fats, the neutral fats, which are more, that's the word. It's more of a neutral thing.
Yeah.
So the fats that you're getting from full fat yogurt, for the most part, are going to have in cheeses, they're higher in saturated fat, but it's not going to have the same effect based on not like pie in the sky, but based on research into this, that the risks that the red meat has, the fat from red meat has, the fat from butter has, MCT oils, coconut oils, like those are, it's sort of well understood what this can possibly do to your biomarkers, right? And so what do? The proof is in the pudding. You have your LDL cholesterol measured. You have your ApoB levels measured. Things that we've talked about. You can most likely continue to enjoy the full fat dairy, the whole milk, the Greek yogurt, the cheeses without worry, unless you're somebody who sees that these markers are out of the normal range.
Yep.
Or out of a range that that your doctor feels is it's probabilistic, right? It's just, we're looking at the risks of these certain things. If your LDLs are this, doesn't necessarily mean that this is the path you'll be on. But we know in the game of probabilities, it's not the best thing if you are exorbitantly high on this scale. So what would you do? Oh, well, my diet is, I love steak. I don't eat it a ton, but every week I'm buying red meat and we make tacos, and I don't pay attention to the fat content of the yogurt I buy. I just try not to buy the one with all the fake sweeteners, and hey, good on you. That's awesome. So what does your blood work say? Well, it's normal. It's fine. Well, great.
Yeah.
Great. Then continue to, you most likely can continue to do what you're doing. And that's one sliver of the puzzle. Like I assume this person probably has their blood glucose in check. I assume they're getting their blood pressure screened and all these all the other gamut of things. But I'm speaking specifically to that person who says, yeah, I'm doing all those things, and see, it didn't have an untoward effect on my health. So, Josiah, he should do the same thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's when you get this tribalistic dietary recommendation nonsense, right? Instead of saying, well, what about person B or scenario B, where maybe you are at high risk. You eat all those same things. You have your blood drawn, and you see that you're on the higher end, or you're in a range that is not great, we'll say. So what would you do? You can then unwind this and say, well, maybe the lower fat, milk is a better option. Maybe almond milk is a better replacement. Maybe I can still eat tacos, but maybe every third time I make tacos, I get ground turkey instead. Well, instead of eating the ribeye, maybe I get a leaner cut.
Yeah.
I get a leaner cut of steak. Maybe you start to make those decisions, and you say the same thing. You give it 6 months, whatever, and your blood work improves, let's say. Well, you know that you are somebody who, from a dietary cholesterol standpoint, it's sensitive to what's happening with your intake. There are then individuals who maybe they're like in this third category, where the food doesn't matter, the changes one way or the other don't matter as much. You have a genetic propensity towards high blood cholesterol. You can have other measures taken to see if there's a true hereditary component. For those people that usually have an exorbitantly high number that is just not going to respond to dietary changes, unfortunately.
Yep.
And this is even like a vast oversimplification of a lot of this. But the point being, we could go nutrient by nutrient and almost like have this discussion. And so I think that's what makes making a dietary guideline challenging, but also this is the reasonable, in my opinion, from what I know now, this is the reasonable approach to dietary fat intake. As much as I think that the red meat increase in recommendation is troubling, well, it may not. The reality is it may not be troubling for every single person. But again, in a scenario where you're just managing all these different risks, for another person, it could be a pretty bad idea.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's some of that is the challenge of putting together guidelines that are theoretically universally applicable when the reality is individual biology does vary.
Right. Exactly. And then again, looping back maybe the cancer risk of certain meats. If you're eating a chunk of red meat and
you like it well done.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
First of all, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Gosh, why have red meat if you're just going to turn it into char? Anyway, sorry. All right. So in your notes, and you've touched on this already, but let's get explicit about it. It talks about the thermostat versus the fuel gauge, the old model and the new model. What are we talking about here?
Yeah. So we're looking at the carbohydrate, we kind of touched on it, the carbohydrate insulin model.
Yep.
The mechanism is that higher glycemic foods, they can spike insulin. They will spike insulin. Insulin then locks energy into fat cells. At a cellular level, the body is essentially starved, and this is what can make you hungry. And so what they are proposing here in this guideline is that the 10 gram, that's another recommendation as far as sugars go, capping your meals at 10 grams of added sugar per meal.
Okay. Of added sugar.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not just the caloric total that's important, but it kind of like is supposed to squash the effect that this can then have on, the process that drives pre-diabetes. So, insulin in their mind is the security guard. So when insulin is high, again, energy goes into the fat cells. Door is locked. Even though you have body fat, you continue to store it again anyway. The blood sugar remains low, and then you have to essentially unwind this and unlock it. And it's kind of the cycle of, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
it's a convoluted metaphor.
Yeah,
I don't
Maybe
love
we don't
the way
use
they've
that.
written it, but it makes, I understand what you're saying. Anybody that understands the basics of insulin and the way it works in the body, hopefully understands this. But you eat food, your insulin is supposed to go up, especially if it's carbohydrate rich. That insulin instructs the body, hey, use this blood sugar, pull it into your muscles, burn it. And if your insulin's already high, then it instructs it, hey, store this because we don't need it right now. Then it gets pulled into fat cells.
Right.
That's the general idea.
Exactly.
So the problem is having your blood sugar consistently high means that your insulin is consistently high, which means that your body becomes more resistant to insulin and more likely to store that blood sugar as fat. Did I say it all right?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yep. Nicely done.
I don't need a metaphor, but the point is, this is a more hormonally based concept of the metabolic problem that we're having than strictly saying we're eating too many calories.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so it in a way it makes the calories are calories in, calories out sort of argument. It really does kind of shove that to the back burner, which I don't know that it's kind of wild that we can still,
we're still arguing about these things.
It's certainly looking at the carbohydrate insulin model is very useful in the concept or in the context of diabetes. Again, when I don't know. Maybe we'll slam the door on that for now.
Yeah.
But I still think that there's tons of merit to those that are critical of the carbohydrate insulin model, kind of just blasted as the foundation, kind of as a catch-all for everybody.
It is. And the point of bringing this up is this is the foundation for these new guidelines. is less focus on the amount of calories, more focus on the insulin
nutrients.
and
Yeah,
nutrient
exactly. Well, how
model.
is this affecting my blood sugar throughout the day? What is causing the spikes in insulin? You know, it's a fair point. But again, like, you know, on a population level, on a guideline level, I don't really know that that's what you need to be worrying about either, right?
I'll be the libertarian here and just say, this is why the government shouldn't be recommending dietary guidelines anyway. Have this argument in the science world, let people debate it, and leave the government out of it. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And then it's all packaged. Then it's packaged up in this way where the 9-page document says these kind of things. And then the 90-page document is a little more ideological. And some of the other experts on the other side are questioning where these sources came from. You know, it's like, gosh, like it just blows my mind.
All right. So we have covered a lot of this stuff. We've covered a lot of the philosophy behind it. It seems like this isn't doing a lot to unify people. It's mostly just reinforcing the tribal element of the nutritional debate that's happening in the science world.
Yeah.
Which, okay, that's unfortunate, but here we are. What else do we need to know?
I think where we'll close, because I think I'm getting delirious, is the international reaction to this. My understanding that some of the healthier countries, by metrics of obesity rates, life expectancy, all those sorts of things that are better than we are. Mm-hmm. Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Japan, and right, like it's bigger than just one nutrient. Oh gosh, there's a whole swath of things that play a role in those metrics, but they, I think, are looking at this like what are they doing? Like there are some countries that have like said that you should be eating 0 to 3 servings of red meat per week, to putting it at the top of the upside down pyramid. Like they want to play games with their new pyramid. And we're thinking like, dude, are they taking all these steps back? Like what is happening?
So those are called the blue zones, right? And that we're talking about, there's like a whole industry around, longevity and what is it that these folks are doing differently. And if I hear you correctly, you're saying many of these countries are looking at these new guidelines and going, that doesn't look like what we're doing.
Right.
And what we're suggesting.
Exactly. And I mean, for example, this confusion arises from the difference in something like the red meat limits. If you look at the Nordic nutrition recommendations in 23, so used by Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, they recently set a limit of 350 grams or approximately 12 ounces per week for red meat to reduce cancer and heart disease risk. They also emphasize food processing, which we do as well, avoiding ultra-processed foods, etc.
Yeah.
Spain, this is who I was referring to. Spain, their recommendations suggest 0 to 3 servings of meat per week. And so there's a great divergence here.
Of meat or of red meat?
Of meat.
Wow.
Yep.
I was in Spain. They like meat.
Right. I believe. Someone's going to fact check me out there. Point being, it is much lower than what we've done with the top of the biggest icon in the picture is the big ribeye. I mean, it's a big difference. So there's a huge ideological shift in it, and it's removed the constraint that we've had on saturated fat. It's not that like all saturated fat's bad. We talked about the food matrix thing. Come on. Like there's some balance to it. But again, it's just that other countries, they seem to be making some strides.
Yeah.
And so yes, things needed to change, things needed to move, we needed to be nimble.
And
but
not everything here is awful.
Right, exactly. But did it just need to be this like, we flip it.
We call it pendulamic propensity.
That's right.
We swing hard one direction, then we swing hard the other direction. We do not hang out in the middle.
Yep.
Let me see if I can offer some reasonable wisdom based on what everything you just said, the new guidelines, and what we know in general. it's a good idea to eat real food, to focus on single ingredient or few ingredient foods. The more you cook it at home, the better it is, generally speaking.
Yeah.
You should eat a lot of protein. You should eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. You probably shouldn't eat as many grains and breads and cereals as we used to think you should. You should probably control your blood sugar. That's not a bad idea. But the idea that you should just replace bread with steak is also not a fair assessment and realistically going to give you some pretty poor outcomes in the long run. All of this is controversial. None of it is set in stone. We don't know anything. We're still trying to figure it out. Get your blood test done and eat appropriate. Talk to your doctor.
That's right.
All right. Well, I hope that was helpful for somebody. It just taught me that I don't take my dietary advice from the government. If you learned anything, we hope that you will share it with somebody else.
Or don't wait for the administration.
That's a better way of saying.
To shift your opinions.
Yeah.
Because takes a long time. Usually there's this whole peer review process and it takes a long, and that's another reason for this. It's like you take too long. We're going to come in. We know what the answers are. We got this. Right.
It's true. I mean, a lot of this is stuff that I've been hearing for years,
right?
In the more nutrition world, heady, sciencey world, people that do this sort of thing a lot. This is not new conversation. Anyway, if you learned something, we hope that you will share the show with somebody that you love, somebody that you know, somebody that needs to know these things. We went deep. There was a lot here. You should probably listen to it a second time. I'm just saying,
I agree.
It wouldn't hurt our view count and we would appreciate it. Give the show a thumbs up or a 5-star review, whatever you can do. We love comments. We respond to every single one of them, even the goofy ones. Please send comments, questions, email us, questions@askjoedimatteo.com. That's questions@askjoedimatteo.com, AskJoedimatteo.com. That website is also where you can find past episodes of this show, past episodes of the show that started this, the Ask the Pharmacist show. You can also find all the supplements and products that we sell, things that help to make this show happen. They're on our website, AskJoedimatteo.com. I think that's it.
Yep.
I feel like eating, and I'm going to go have some chicken because it's got less saturated fat. Have a great day, guys. We'll talk to you soon.